Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tata Steel 2026, one of the most exciting tournaments that we've got going on. Half of the candidates are playing in it. Of course, I'm talking about Giri, Matthias Bluebaum, Javahir Sindarov, and Praggnanandhaa. But the tournament is wide open at the top. It is a multiple horse race, and there are now 2 rounds remaining. I will show you rounds 10 and 11, and then we have 12 and 13 upcoming to conclude the tournament. Also in the challenger section, we have Andy Woodward, teenager superstar from the United States, who is trying to win the tournament. And if he wins the challengers in 2027, he will play in the Masters section. So a lot of fun stuff. We've seen Gukesh struggle a little bit, but he had some emphatic bounce back games all over the place, blunders, brilliancies, and more. And so without further ado, I will jump into the rounds 10 and 11 recaps, and we will kick things off with a game that is absolutely fascinating. This is Erdogmus versus Gukesh. This game is a 14-year-old versus a 19-year-old, and the 14-year-old with white from Turkey has an opportunity to become the youngest ever person to defeat a world champion, I think in a classical game. It's some record. He also is on pace to maybe become the youngest ever 2700, although the field is absolutely insane. So we open things up with pawn to e4, and Gukesh plays e5. Let's see how aggressive he is going to be. White opts for a 4 knights e4, e5 game, which is a way to play. But then, now if white wants to draw, white would play d4 instead. White plays bishop b5. He plays the 4 knights Spanish, which is completely reasonable. And I know for a beginner, this might look totally harmless, but already white has minimized a ton of ways to claim a traditional advantage. Now, the opening develops quite symmetrically, and then Erdogmus plays knight d5, takes, e4, knight e1, all of this played. It's actually Gukesh, if you look at the time, look at black's time, he's spending a lot of time on these moves, trading in the center with d5, and now white drops back to e1. Black plays knight to d4, and white defends the bishop. And after this trade and the move c6, the young man with the white pieces does something I don't understand whatsoever. In this position, with an hour and 58 minutes on his clock, mind you, he has only spent about a minute and a half up until this point because he was in his preparation. He spends 50 minutes on the next move. Now, it's quite clear that he was calculating a lot of different things. Various rook a4s potentially, c3, d3, etc. He opts for the move c3, and after bishop retreats to c5, I don't know what he was calculating, Gukesh played this move in 15 minutes. He spends another 31 minutes on this move, and now he has 36 minutes remaining for the entire game. I think Gukesh just went and took a nap. 80 minutes on 2 pawn pushes is mind-blowing stuff. Is absolutely mind-blowing stuff. It's now he only has 36 minutes for the remaining 28 moves. He's only made 12 moves. He has to make it to the 40th move or he will lose on time. Now, the good news for him is that after this sacrifice of a pawn, he goes for a little bit of counterplay, and overall, white gets a pretty reasonable position. Gukesh ends up giving a pawn back and then plays queen c7. It's actually a very complicated game where white has an extra pawn, but all his pieces are on the back rank, and it's not easy to develop them. Gukesh trades, plays bishop c4. White now has to make 20 more moves or he will literally lose the game on time, and he has 18 minutes to do so. Gukesh plays the move d5 with the queen standing in the middle of the board. Looks like we are heading for a relatively equal game. Now he rejects a trade of queens. Gukesh loves to keep the tension. He does not like easy games. He gets the pawn back. Now it is black who is up a pawn. I mean, the guys are just playing hot potato. If you actually look at this, it's really funny. White was was down a pawn, then he was up a pawn, and now here throughout this position, he's up a pawn. Now he goes down a pawn again. Neither one of these guys wants to be up a pawn at all. White now has 9 minutes to make the remaining 16 moves or he will lose this game on time. And what actually ends up happening here is crazy. So knight d5 threatens knight to b6. Okay, Gukesh grabs a pawn, takes this, and in this position calculated the move bishop a6. Now bishop a6 loses the game on the spot. It loses the game. Now what it looks like here is that, the queen is trapped. And if you play queen to a7, black will play queen to b5, and the queen will literally it's never going to escape. The queen's just completely stranded. So the only thing you can do here logically is to sack the rook and break the queen out of jail and play this position where the queen and the rook are up a pawn for black, and black is trying to win this position. Except both of these young guys missed an unbelievable defensive / offensive tactic by white, which would have basically secured Erdogmus the victory. In this position, white can play rook to d1, which on its own makes sense because you are counterattacking a queen. And obviously, if, queen takes d1, the queen takes the rook. But what happens if black plays something like queen e7? White plays the unbelievable queen takes rook. And the point is, then you sack this rook. And it's like, well, wait, what? Okay, I get it. If queen takes rook, I just get mated on the back rank. Black doesn't have enough time. Black does not have time here to get out of this position and lose the queen back. Bishop b5, rook d8, bishop e8, rook e1, and that's it. And Erdogmus, in this unbelievable combination, could have become the youngest player to beat a reigning world champion, and Gukesh would have lost 4 out of 5 games. Like, it's incredible, just the trajectory of two different, careers and situations in the tournament. Erdogmus didn't see that, and neither did Gukesh, otherwise he wouldn't have gone for this. And instead, Gukesh just ends up in a pawn-up endgame. And this endgame is not extremely easy to win by any stretch of the imagination, but I think once you kind of start spiraling with white, it can be quite difficult to defend this. A 3-on-2 endgame on one side of the board is likely very drawable, but when you have a position like this, where the kings are very far apart and black's king is much more active and winning the pawn, ultimately, Gukesh just demonstrates excellent technique, and Erdogmus does not put up as good of a fight as you would like. He's up 2 pawns here with black, and Gukesh wins. And this is a devastating game. Now, obviously, when you're 14, you're going to have, hundreds more opportunities in these tournaments. But if he had pulled this off, this would have been nuts. Gukesh would have been down to, 27-39, and Erdogmus would have been, winning the tournament. It's just so crazy what it all comes down to, and the margins. And man, I mean, Gukesh plays with so much fire in his games, but sometimes it pays off. Just crazy, crazy, crazy. The margin here was so little. And I mean, rook d1 and this idea to sack the queen, sack the rook, double the rooks. Such a tough thing to spot, just insane. And I have more insane games for you. So we're now going to move to this game between Bluebaum and Anish Giri. This is a matchup preview of the Candidates Tournament. And literally, when I saw this opening, my mouth dropped to the floor. Bluebaum always plays d4. He is not an e4 player. And Anish Giri played g6. Let me tell you something right now. d4, g6 is what Anish Giri would play if he and I played. Okay? I mean, maybe not. Maybe he would just play a Queen's Gambit and beat me anyway. There is no greater insult at the 2700 classical level to play g6 move 1 in a classical game. In Blitz, you can play whatever you want. But with 2 hours on the clock to play the modern defense is crazy. But he kind of knew that, Bluebaum is not going to go for e4, so Bluebaum plays this approach with c4 and e4, which has its own kind of details. And not only that, Bluebaum voluntarily plays into a position where, after the move e5 and this locked structure, he proceeds the way he always plays online. This is the thing about modern chess, is that Giri studied Bluebaum's games and tendencies based on his online games. And usually here, Bluebaum takes this pawn, and then plays not like this. He always plays rook b1, which is what he said in his post-match interview. Rook b1, and then the game proceeds. In this game, white went bishop d3, and then he sort of just, played the setup, which is knight to f6, knight to e2, and then now black, also plays his pieces out. But you actually have to be a little careful with black, because if the knight gets to f4, you don't have knight h5, and the bishop is hit, which is why Anish played knight h5. He's still in his preparation, and here Bluebaum went f4, which is not the top move of the computer, but it's a relatively principled decision. If this is a very long game and the queens get traded, white is going to have some structural problems. His pieces don't coordinate very well. Now, if this knight lands here, the position will look nice, but the doubled pawns are a bit of a problem for sure. So Bluebaum is like, okay, Anish Giri is disrespecting me. I'm going to stand up to him. I'm going to play f4. Anish backs off so that the move f5 doesn't attack his bishop. And now h3 is played, and clearly g4 is incoming. In this position, Anish played queen e7, which is possible. He has many moves. Queen e7 played relatively quickly, and Bluebaum just goes for it. just a full-on, king-side expansion, pushing all the pawns in front of his king. And, the knight goes back to g7, and now he plays the move f5, which simultaneously threatens a fork, also restricts the knight from re-entering the game at all. And there are several options here. Black can take, black can play the move queen h4, although queen h4 is extremely provocative. Black can also play the strange move f6, which is very passive, but you just try to put the knight here and disallow white from playing f6 himself. And Giri plays queen h4 indeed. But this position is actually shockingly more dangerous for black than it looks. It is not easy at all. The engine on the screen is on a very low depth. It's sort of spitting out various ideas. Like it thinks that h5 is possible. It thinks taking on f5 is possible. It thinks this is possible. But there is something lurking in this position beneath the surface, and it's actually the fact that the position is unbelievably precarious for black. Not because of any forward attack. It's because of knight to g2. And the queen is not going to stand comfortably on any square anymore. And if the queen wanders in, it actually can get trapped. And that's exactly what happens. Giri commits to this position. And after queen h3, rook to f3, queen takes g4, his queen is actually trapped after the move bishop to e2. It's kind of crazy. Like, his queen doesn't have a way to escape the white position. I think he probably thought that it did. And then here he very quickly just played the move g takes f5. But there are several problems here, like, if black castles, which is also possible, white will play bishop f4 with the intention to just simply trap the queen completely with a move like rook to g3. Yeah, black is, and for example, if g5 is played here, white doesn't even have to rush. He can just play bishop h2. The queen is just trapped. It's trapped amongst the pawns. If it tries to break out with queen e4, there's rook to e3, and the queen is literally stranded because after queen takes f5, queen d6, it's maiden coming over here. There's all sorts of, well, not there, but on this square. So there's all sorts of lines here where it's actually really dangerous for black to play. Rook e3, and then in this position, Bluebaum just finds an amazing resource, which is this, and rook e4, disconnecting the checkmate threat and counterattacking the queen. And in literally 3 moves, Anish Giri resigns to Matthias Bluebaum. Bluebaum just beat Gukesh and Giri back to back. My guy, he breaks into the 2700 club. I made a video called the 2026 Candidates Tier List. In that video, I previewed and created a 2026 candidates tier list. Shocking, it was not clickbait. And in that video, I said, look, Bluebaum, obviously, of anybody here, has the highest chance of finishing in last place. But that's not an insult, and he's not just there for the experience. Bro, if he's playing like this man is going to finish top 3 in the candidates. And now in that tournament, people will have to take risk against him. And it just seems like if you take too much of a risk against it, they're going to slap you across the face. Now, then he's going to give an interview. He's like, yeah, I'm just terrible. Yeah, I'm just getting very lucky. Yeah. Like, his interviews are so funny because he has my level of self-deprecation, except he's a 2700 level player. So it's really incredible. He beats Anish Giri. Just crazy. Now I have more games for you. Keymer has had a tournament to remember and also forget. This man, Keymer, has played 11 games of chess and has made 2 draws. He is like the Justin Gaethje of this tournament. 9 decisive games out of 11 in a 2700 plus tournament is unheard of. This man is like the modern Tal. I mean, he's got a very solid German positional style. Not in this tournament. And I will be showing you a couple of his games. He didn't have a great start. He goes for e4. It's a Spanish against Arjun Erigaisi with this line, d3 and c3, a little bit of a sideline. Arjun, like I always say, he does not need another invitation to go for a fight. He goes for c4, expanding on the queen side. But the thing about the Spanish is that if you can land a typical kind of king side expansion on black, knight on f5 and all this type of stuff, that's really all you have to remember about the Spanish, black is going to get demolished. Like, there are many Spanishes that are closed, like this one. Everything is very locked, where if you are not careful with black and you take too many risks, only bad things are going to happen. And as we can see in this game, black is already desperately defending this position. The white knight on h2 not feeling particularly comfortable, and it's not played... It's not played nicely by black. Like, there is nothing black can do. The bishops are going to be opening up the position. Queen comes back to f2 to avoid any tempi. Hit the knight on b6 as well. We have Arjun going for some complications, but in this little repositioning match, the knight ends up back on f5. Both knights have an opportunity to shine on the f5 square, which is exactly what you want in the Spanish. Rook f1. Erigaisi, one of the trickiest players, but his position completely collapses, and with the bishop pair, f6 hangs, h6 is incoming, bishop d4 is incoming, e5 to rip open the center and get the second bishop involved. An absolute masterclass in how to play and how not to play a Spanish was in this game. Arjun taking simply too many risks in this tournament. He's 27-75 official, but he is currently second to last in this tournament, which is mind-boggling because he was just ranked top 3 in the world. Like, there was a period in 2025, he was the 3rd highest rated player. He was above Fabiano Caruana at like 2790. I think he even broke 2800. If not, he was like 2798. So it just shows you that the rating between 2730 now, especially if you're young. If you're one of the older guys and your rating is 2730, your rating is 2730. But if you're 2730, young, up to like 2790, any of these guys can beat anybody on any given day. So Keymer beats Arjun to get back into some sort of race. Now, Gukesh versus Aravindh. Now, this game, another absolutely barn burner game. We are moving now into round number 11. So this one, Aravindh struggling in the tournament. He's in the bottom two. He's in the bottom 2 or 3. This was just a Queen's Gambit declined. Queen E2. Normal game, symmetrical structure. Gukesh with a little bit of a first step into the position. He's jumping in there with the knight, and he gets the bishop pair. And this is like one of these positions where you're just going to grind down the opponent, really. Queen A4, Queen H4, you're creating some kingside weaknesses. Now in the long run here, white is just crushing because the black king is so weak. And in the long run, white has an H-pawn. Like, white just has a pawn that has a free pass to the other side of the board. So it's going to be really difficult for black. He's going to have to keep his king somewhere here in the endgame. He's not going to be able to wander over here. Black will try to use these pawns. So far, a fantastic game from Gukesh, his best in a little bit. F5 on the board. Queen G5, the black king super weak. And I mean, everything is going swimmingly up even until this point. And Gukesh is winning on the board. Bishop to B3 attacks his rook. Now, just like in the Erdogmus game, there is a ghost tactic. There is a tactic in this position that if I tap you on the shoulder and go find the tactic, you will find, not you, you're not finding it, but maybe even I won't find it. But if they tapped Gukesh on the shoulder here and said there's a tactic, he would find it instantly. Danger levels. Gukesh has to watch more of my videos. Rook is hanging. You don't have to move the rook if you can find a threat of equal or exceeding value. I don't mean the king, I mean the queen. Bishop a6, simple idea. If rook takes a6, rook d8, that's obvious. But what about this? Rook d7. Game over. Because queen e7 and queen f7 and queen f6 and queen f7. And even though you have a check, the king is always safe. Bishop a6 just wins. Bishop a6 is crushing. Black's only move here would be something like a queen c7. Gukesh then here would have had to find the next move, which is queen f6 to threaten queen h8. That is very important. And then he's a pawn in this endgame, and black lost his ability to ever create an outside pass pawn. Now in this game, white went here, and he never got up the pawn. He kept hunting Aravindh's king, but somehow Aravindh's king was always completely safe. Check, check, check. Now the boys made it past move 40 here, so they get their extra time. He plays very well. He puts Aravindh under massive pressure. But look at the black king playing like hopscotch. I mean, he goes to f8, and then watch, he goes to e7 and f8 and e7 and f8 and e7 and f8 and e7, and then he runs to d6, and then he runs back to e7 and f6 and g7. It's like on the jungle gym, he's just jumping around. Rook f8, Aravindh defending himself really nicely. Gukesh has lost games like this before where he's pressuring for so long and he keeps creating winning chances. But in this game, Aravindh was tricky all the way to the end. Look at this man's king, dude. Look at his king. How much cardio did he do before? Gukesh created winning chance after winning chance after winning chance, but just not enough time at the end. The rook comes back, bishop b7, and Aravindh stops the pawn. And actually ends the game with more pawns. But the game obviously here is just the draw after 68 moves. Gukesh missing a chance. Luckily, he's the world champ. He is not a candidate. He doesn't have to win that tournament again. Yeah, as we look forward to the candidates, every single half a point is going to matter so much more in tournaments like that. Obviously not in this one, but we will go. Now, Erdogmus off of the defeat to Giri, to Gukesh, has to play Anish Giri. And Anish Giri, here we have the matchup of the oldest guy in the tournament versus the youngest. And the oldest guy is born in 1994, which is so crazy. In this game, Queen's Gambit declined, actually very similar to the one that Gukesh played. Queen c2, we probably will get a symmetrical structure. It's an old line, ancient line. Played a lot in the World Championship of 2000 18 between Fabi and Magnus. Knight d2, bishop d5, you know, like a niche is looking on f7, but obviously that's never, I mean, you're never going to get there. Knight f3, bishop f1. You sacrifice the rook on f1, then you win the bishop, and you go for a kingside attack. Now, in this position, Erdogmus needs to play bishop to b5, and the idea of bishop to b5, it's the only move, is that when white takes on f7, you then move the bishop to e8. You actually allow the knight to take, and then you attack the knight so it moves, and then under the threat of a check, you move your king. What you cannot do is allow the white knight to sit on f7, because when you let the knight sit on f7, you're going to have a lot of problems. That's very difficult to do, and in just 45 seconds, he plays bishop a6, and we land here, and here, white doesn't have to move the knight. That is a massive factor, because you will either have to sack the rook for it, or white's just going to keep attacking you, and Anish just plays h4. Erdogmus thinks he has enough time to play g6, etc., but he doesn't have enough time. He doesn't have enough time, because not only is there king h2 now, there's no back rank, the rook is coming in. Now black has to give up the rook. And this is what you wanted to avoid. Instead, what you wanted to happen is to put the bishop on e8. Very, very tough to do, to tread that fine line, because now you're just losing. Not only are you're not surviving the endgame, you're not even surviving the middle game here with black, because the king is completely safe, rook f4, and queen e7 comes in, and you will lose everything. And even if you don't care about those pawns after bishop c6, bishop e8 and rook f8 is just checkmate. Like rook f8 is incoming, and you will lose the game. Bishop e8 is actually really nasty, because even if you take, rook f8 is mate. And Anish Giri beating up on the young kids. Meanwhile, the 14-year-old Erdogmus, first piece of adversity in this tournament, back-to-back defeats for him. We'll see how he bounces back in his nervous system and how he's feeling. It's so easy to go on a losing streak in a tournament like this, because everyone's a monster. Like, everyone is so strong. More games, by the way, from the master section. Like I said, this is going to be very, very fun recap. Erigaisi looking to salvage the tournament a little bit. He's playing one of the leaders. Sindarov has been a sneaky leader. He's made a lot of draws in a row. I've kind of shown him in a couple of videos. But overall in this game, typical Arjun stuff. He's, taking a little bit of provocative stuff in the opening. But not Erdogmus, Sindarov is doing a nice job kind of keeping him at bay. Rook d3, dynamic position. He's maybe looking to win the pawn back on e4, something like this. White plays e5, the knight goes to h5. Very complicated position. White has an extra pawn, but all his pieces suck. Like, all of them, he's going to have to fight back. He's going to try to kick out the bishop. Maybe you even take it to just simplify the position a little bit. Rook a3, trying to trade the rook off. But every move that black is making, he's improving what he has, and the black knight is going to come to f4, and that knight is encroaching on the position. Still, knight takes bishop here, maybe. But that's not Erigaisi's style, and he's going to keep as much tension in the position as possible. Now we have a simplification, but black gets the bishop. The bishop is surviving. Arjun playing queen f5, knight f4 zipping in. Who's attacking who? My favorite thing to say. Knight e4 looking to take the bishop. Knight comes in with check. Knight centralizes on d4. The best move for white here might have even been to sack the rook, which is so tough. It's so tough to understand this, and then to go g3 and stuff like that. But we're treading a fine line here of a very complicated endgame where Sindarov just picks a pawn up on the outskirts of the board, and suddenly you're like, with what you're a little uncomfortable with white. You're like, I didn't want to be down a pawn. You didn't really want to do this, and queen c7 and rook d1 apparently a mistake. He needed to be more active. He needed to be typical kind of Arjun, going for some kingside stuff. Sindarov consolidates his extra pawn quite slowly. And is like, yo, I'm just winning. I'm just up a pawn, and I'm gonna hunt the one on f5, and the white king is very weak. And that's kind of how it goes. He was much, much better, but then they got into a little bit of a time trouble, and after a little bit of trouble, he just gets a totally winning endgame. This is winning for black because his rook and king and outside pawn are too strong. It takes some 60 moves. They might have gotten to 70. Nope, 66 moves. You're promoting. This is here. Yes, with white, you can come back and stop me, but you just don't have enough pawn counterplay of your own. King d3, king c3, king b2. Sindarov is winning the tournament. He has 7 points out of 11. He is undefeated. He's undefeated. 3 wins and 8 draws. 7 out of 11. What a monster. Just an incredible performance. And he's finding ways to win. I called him a sleeper pick, a dark horse pick to win the candidates. I would not be completely shocked. I can't just say it off of one performance. Dude is up to 2740. He's like a top 9 player in the world, maybe top 12. It's very messy over there. This is his first time. Like, Sindarov the last year has just broken into consistent elite tournament invitations in the freestyle, and he's here to stay. So we're going to take a look at maybe one more game from the Masters. Yes, this is Keymer once again versus Pragg. This game could be an hour long on its own, but I don't want to make a 2-hour-long recap. Extremely complicated English game where Keymer goes for a kingside attack, like my boy is playing inspired chess. Then he locks the bishop in on h1, so long-term, white might have some kingside space problems. The game gets nuts. Pragg sacks a knight to bring the king forward, sacks another knight to bring the king forward. Now the king is just standing out in the open. Now, very important, you can't take this, because then there would be bishop f4, king d4, and rook c1, and the king would get embarrassingly checkmated in the center of the board. You would know about this. But me too, by the way. Yeah, instead of all of that, now, this game is crazy. So, rook f8, right? The bishop goes to d4. Pragg is going to try to now bring all the pawns into the middle because the king is there. There's f4, bishop h8, complete pandemonium, king running around the middle of the board, knight e5, king d6. Now we have no draw. King goes here, check. King goes back to d7. Now the white knight can't go to e5. Knight d6, and in comes knight g4. This gets a brilliant because he sacks a rook. Game review knows. Now he takes on b7. He takes on b7 because now a6 and a7 are hanging. So everything is perishing in the black position. He doesn't have a lot of time to figure it out. He grabs the bishop. Pawn takes. He takes on e5, giving away the knight completely, gets another brilliant move. Pragg plays rook d1. It wasn't even a good idea to take on a6 because bishop d4 was a huge problem. So knight goes back to b8. And in the course of this game, the king, look how brave you have to be, walking along this line so that one of these pieces can come to d7 and block you. Now we have knight to a5. The king runs out to f6. It's a recap of just running kings around the board. Knight d7. And Keymer, with low time here, he only has 5 minutes to make 8 moves, consolidates into an endgame like this. He gets another brilliant move, but that's hardly anything. And now we have this endgame. Both guys have to make 3 moves in 20 seconds. Rook d7 here, and here Pragg has 19 seconds to decide whether to trade the rooks off and defend the endgame rook versus bishops, and he doesn't do it. And now this endgame is going to be quite difficult to play. This is maybe his last moment to trade like this. It's the only way to save the game. He opts not to do it, and by keeping the rooks on the board, it's actually going to make things much easier for black, because the bishops just get more powerful with more teammates. He wins the pawn, Keymer. He pushes, and black is just is dominating here. Just excellent coordination. Pragg needed to trade those rooks, but it's so difficult to commit to that because you just feel like you lose all your chances of counterplay. And I mean, yeah, just like an absolute buzzsaw, these bishops. Just nothing at all for white. Keymer back-to-back wins, by the way. I think he has 6 points now. Yeah, he has 6. He's still trailing the leaders by a full point. But my gosh, is he going, absolutely bananas. Hans Niemann also won. He won. It's been a while since I featured him, and I feel for my guy, Van Nguyen. I mean, he is having some incredible tournament games, but he just cannot find a way to pull it off down the stretch. You really feel for him, but that's what happens. I mean, when you come up to the Masters from the challengers in this tournament, you sink or swim. Now, I would like to show you this game because it was completely insane. Hans just played really fast. 1 hour remaining on the clock versus 17 minutes after 25 moves. Now watch what happens. In this game, we go to already kind of like an endgame. White just has all these pawns going up the board, and Hans somehow tricks his way to just fully going with the B pawn. Like, the B pawn sneaks behind everybody. This looks like offside. How does this even, like, the pawn sneaks through, and then he gets his material over there, and white is going to lose on time. He ends up making the time control. But this endgame is worse for white because it's just so dangerous. The rooks are there, the B pawn is coming down the board, and it results in a position where all Hans needs is that B pawn. Look at the white pawns! But Hans promotes, and in the skirmish, he wins the knight, and white is just losing here. Because black has an extra rook. Now, maybe an engine would hold this because these pawns would just go. But it's so difficult to play it. You look like you're playing reasonable moves, but the pawns are stopped. And it's actually black who is threatening to win. And this is the problem, is that when everything clears off the board, this is just losing. There's nothing you can do here. The rooks get active, the king gets active, and that's it. I mean, rook f1, and then the king comes in, and then the second rook, and 3 pawns look nice, but they just lose you the game. Brutal tournament for Ty, but like, what can you say? I mean, really, like, he's battling in every single game, but ultimately, yeah, the more experienced, higher rated guys are winning it. I'd like to go to the challengers because, and I think Hans also has 6 points, 6.5. He's a half a point out. He's had a quiet last 5 rounds, but 6 rounds actually. He won early in the tournament, but he could win it in the last 2 rounds. Now, going into the challenger section, it was Andy Woodward winning the tournament. Marc-Andre Maurizzi was there. Suleymanli was there. They were half a point away from Andy. And then Ivanchuk. And Ivanchuk had to play Woodward and Suleymanli back-to-back. So he was playing 2 of the guys leading the tournament, 2 of the young guys. And Ivanchuk was younger than older than Woodward, Suleymanli, and Marc-Andre combined. Combined, those guys have an average have an age of like 54, and Ivanchuk is like 56. Mind-blowing. Now I would like to show you this game. There is really not much to look at here. This is a Rogozin. It's a very solid choice from Ivanchuk, but in this game, it's a normal game, he went here. And he was like, okay, Andy, you probably have to play Queen F5 or Queen E7 or Queen G6. And Andy was like, I'm going to take this pawn. And Ivanchuk looked up at him, drew his sword, and with a slice of the sword, at such a fine, fast pace, ended the game. Rook C2, Queen A3, Knight E5, attacking C6 and pinning the knight to the rook. The queen tries to escape. Bishop B3 hitting the queen once again. The queen moves. Now the knight and the rook team up on the pawn. And Andy Woodward, before you know it, is simply down a rook. He loses the rook in the skirmish. Ivanchuk keeps obliterating the position with knight F7, giving up his own rook. Bishop takes C2. He takes back with the bishop, because if you take on F7 with the king in this position, there's all sorts of nasty tactics, but the simplest is just something like bishop to A4. By far the easiest. Oh, there's also queen F3 check as a nice bonus. Bishop A4, queen F3, everything in the black position is collapsing. The knight goes to F6, he returns the knight to D8, bishop to A4, queen B3, knight C6, and white's just completely dominating here. H3, queen B7, light squared attack, he wins a bishop, there's no counterplay here, and Ivanchuk just picks up all of the material and checkmates Andy Woodward. Yo, he's like 3 times the age of his opponent, if not more. Yeah, more. I think Andy's 16. What a game. And Andy, the lesson is just do not take a free pawn from a 50-year-old superstar legend. Like, queen G6, queen E7, queen F5. So this is one game. While this game is going on, you know, we have Yuffa versus Suleymanli happening on the next board. In this game, Suleymanli, with the black pieces, he goes for a kind of a semi-Slav type of thing, opposite side castling. Yuffa plays really inspired chess, gets a beautiful attack brewing, queen C3, bishop back, and here, bishop G7, sacrificing a bishop. In comes C4. White here has to find something ridiculous. First of all, bishop takes pawn is okay. You can move the bishop back, and then you can kind of like long-term threaten to infiltrate with the queen. You have ideas like D5. But in general, here you have to play A3 at the right moment and get the bishop out of the way. This is what you have to do. And if you fail to find A3 at the right moment and bishop out of the way, you will lose. And he takes the rook. And that is not what he should do, because he goes for the idea with bishop F8, but in the ensuing position, it's actually Suleymanli who lands the devastating blow, bishop B7, rook C8. I'm actually not exactly sure what was missed here, but just probably like overthinking, to be honest, because Yuffa played incredibly to get to this position. And like I said, he needed to take, the bishop needed to stay here after CB3, A3, bishop to B7. This is the key idea to get to G7. And after black plays F6 with white, I mean, you have to go G5, and you just have to completely commit to the position. If knight D5, the queen is lost, so black doesn't have the opportunity to get out of the pin. You keep this exactly as it is, and if the counterplay is created, GF6! Look at this. Rook C3, FE7. You just give up the queen. The king is safe. Rook G1, knight C3, and after something like this, you just you give a check, king F7. I'm not even... Oh, Rook G7's mate. Oh my gosh, Rook G7 is mate. Rook G7 is mate. That is crazy. So this is what he had to go for. He gets burnt playing with the fire, and Suleymanli surges forward. And it did not get any better in the next round, by the way, because Faustino Oro, my guy, cooled off a little bit, goes for a Taimanov Sicilian against Yuffa, plays a little bit of cutting-edge preparation, long castle. Yuffa goes for a queenside play. Faustino gets a typical position of his style, little bit of a positional bind, bishop pair, and when black tries to get overly creative, yeah, Faustino I mean, bishop back to d2 and the game is lost. Just bishop d2. I mean, black is already completely in dire straits here. There's no attack at all. And Faustino picks up a knight, just survives the worst of it, is up 2 pawns in an endgame, bulldozes the position. And you got to feel for him because Yuffa almost played the game of the year in that previous game. He could have sacked all his pieces, but the young guy's scoring points. And in the last round of the challenger section, playing his next young prodigy, Ivanchuk with the black pieces, plays a Sicilian defense. Of course, you have to play for a win, right? Suleymanli showing his preparation. All right, b5, a3. Now, Ivanchuk has decades of experience playing this. And I mean, Ivanchuk at some point played Anand, played Kasparov, played all of the legends of the past in these kind of like sharp Sicilians, you know. And in this game, look at this, Suleymanli, the young man from Azerbaijan, building his attack against the legend, and now he's gonna have to defend like a wily veteran, you know. He's gonna have to like do the shoulder roll and get out of the way. And Suleymanli focuses on the center, rook d2, c4, trying to lock up the position. Ivanchuk is not letting him. One of the most gifted calculators and dynamic players. Look at this, 30-minute time advantage, knight back, bishop d4. The second they clash, we will see the difference in the levels. Knight c4, e5. White is struggling with the bishop. He goes for some complications. Ivanchuk grabs the bishop. He is unafraid. You take the rook, he takes back. And in the complications, I've been saying it time and time again, the man, the myth, the legend, Ivanchuk repositions his pieces. And Suleymanli just resigns. He just resigns here because he cannot move a single pawn forward. He can't move anything. If he moves the knight, queen d5, he doesn't have a move. Ivanchuk freezes the 20-year-old prodigy from Azerbaijan in a position where you cannot make a move. You don't have a move here. Black will just bring all of his pieces slowly. White could have maybe played something like queen f3, and Ivanchuk just beat the tournament leaders back to back. But you know who's not giving up the first place position? The winner of this game. The winner of this game is not giving up the first place position. Woodward, Maurizzi, we have a Catalan, and Maurizzi in this game goes absolutely ballistic. Look at this. He's like, Woodward, you American, I'm gonna take your head off. All right, and I'm going to represent France or Italy or Corse, whichever one he likes to represent. Anyway, he's just throwing bombs. He's just throwing absolute haymakers at Andy. Andy gets out of the way. In comes h4. Chomps in the center. Knight to c3. Black has an advantage from the opening. I mean, this worked out really well. But here, Marc-Andre has to play a little bit more patiently. He sacks the knight. He sacrifices the knight in the middle of the board. But Andy sacrifices the knight back. This is like amazing. Both guys sacrificing material here. And you don't even have to take the knight. Queen to g4. And queen g6 is almost mate. It forces the king into the middle of the board where it will meet the rook. So the king has to go to f7. And now and only now do you take because the bishop is pinned to the king. So from the early opening, it looked like black was taking over. Now it's white who's taking over. And an absolute disaster occurs here. It's actually around equal. Obviously, white is better. Dynamically speaking, I feel like black's pieces are a little bit worse and the king is actually less safe. But instead of committing to the, full wrath of the position, he goes here. He loses the pawn on e4. And I don't know if Marc-Andre hallucinated here or what, but he plays rook takes h2. And the white king just walks out to f3 and he just resigns. I mean, it's quite clear he miscalculated. Maybe he thought he had some sort of g5. But g5, the white queen can just go to d3, and the king can make some space, and that's it. Insane. What a game. I mean, and I think it's back-to-back losses. No, he won in the 10th round, Marc-Andre. So he has 7.5. Let's take a look at our standings. So the challenger section is being won by Andy Woodward, but it's 8-8 and 7.5. Andy Woodward's last two opponents are Ivic and Lamy. He has to play two 2600s. Ivanchuk has to play Faustino Oro and Daniil Yuffa. Yuffa's having a tough tournament. Oro, of course, is going to try to Oro. And then in the Masters section, we have the Uzbeks, baby. We got the Uzbeks, 7-7, but then we have Niemann, Bluebaum, and Van Forest. If Bluebaum Bluebaum wins this tournament, I am going to go ballistic. That's going to be so hype. But also Sindarov 27-26. I mean, this just shows you, man, if these players played each other more, who knows what would be going on. Incredible stuff. That concludes this recap, and in the next one, and maybe the one after that, we will crown a champion, and we will have some updated ratings and standings before the Candidates Tournament in late March. That's all I have for you today. February 1st on Chessly is the next event, the Valentine's event. I hope you enjoy it very much. And that's it. Get out of here.